Morning, everybody. Morning. I'm just letting a few people in. Good to see you. Hey, Chris, how you doing?
I'm well, and yourself?
Yes, really well, thanks. Yeah, very well. It's
Good.
Friday,
Always a good day.
almost the weekend.
Mm.
Almost the weekend. Yeah. So, how's your week been?
Yeah, it's been pretty good, thank you. Yours?
Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, busy. Yeah, really busy week this week actually, which I quite like. And it's not over yet. There's a lot going on today as well. So, yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's really good. Who else have we got? We've got you, Youth with us. Youth, good morning.
Morning.
Morning. How's the weather there this week, Youth?
It's coming. It's coming. It's we're going up to the 15 degrees next week, so I'm happy.
15 degrees.
Yeah, it's next to summer.
I'd like a bit of 15 degrees here. It's cold in the UK at the moment. It's not,
Oh, is it?
yeah, it's not snowing like it was where you were last
Oh,
week, but it's
yeah,
not, but it's been cold. It's been very cold. Yeah,
yeah.
hopefully spring's on its way.
I agree.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Thanks for joining us this morning. Used to us. We've got Brian's with us as well. Brian, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Hi, Justin.
Morning. How you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good.
Nice sunny day, but like you say, cold.
Yeah, it's cold, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm,
So the
I'm
end of
waiting.
April needs to warm up now.
It does now. Yeah, we've had enough of this, haven't we?
Yeah.
Had enough of this. It needs. We want the warmer weather.
We do, 100%.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if we keep willing it, maybe it'll turn up. Who knows?
Is that like winning the lottery?
Yeah. Well, that doesn't work for me either.
No, no.
Although my wife would say I don't need to win the lottery. I got her, so you know.
Oh, there you go. You won already.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's one way of looking at it. Yeah. Good to see you, Brian. Thanks for joining us. Got Fiona's here as well. Morning, Fiona.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
7 degrees in Perthshire.
7. Oh, it's cold. Yeah, it's cold, isn't it? Well, let's hope that spring's on its way. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Who else? Steve, good morning. Good to see you.
Morning.
Morning. Thanks for joining us. It's good to see you. Who else we've got? Menika. Menika, good morning. People come
Hi,
to these.
hi, Justin.
Hi, Menika. People come to these. They're not always expecting me to talk to you, are you? You're thinking it's going to be a presentation. And it will be.
No, no.
We'll do a bit of
I
that.
was under the weather, so I muted it because I didn't want the cough to disturb everyone.
It's okay. Thank you for joining us, Menika. Good to see you.
Sure. See.
And Princess is here as well. Princess, good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Good
How are
morning.
you?
Very well, thank you. Yes, very well. You?
Yeah, fine, thank you.
Good. Thank you for joining us, everybody. So with Friday morning, I moved today till 10 because I had a 9 o'clock this morning. So I just moved us back to 10. I hope everyone's okay with that. It's good. You're all here anyway. Thank you for making this session this morning. Let me start as usual by just I'll share my slides in a second. I'll keep an eye on the waiting room as well because I sometimes forget to do that. We will do today similar session to usual. So we'll start with just some content and hopefully some ideas to get you thinking. And then we'll open up the opportunity for you to talk to each other in your breakout groups. And then we'll resume, take some feedback, and then I'll close and we'll wrap up by hopefully between 10 to and 5 to 11. So we give you that window between this and your next session. So let me start by sharing my screen. Hold on a sec. Let me find that. Zoom keeps moving things, I noticed over the last couple of weeks. So I sometimes think I'm doing one thing and it's pushed things to another. So hopefully you can now see my screen. I will also start recording the session, actually. Everyone's okay with that. So you just have to accept the start of the session. So thanks everyone for joining us. This week, our leadership workshop, we'll talk about agreeing standards and boundaries with your team. And this is a really interesting topic because I've had lots of experience of this myself, and I'll share a bit of that as we go through the first part of the session. But as usual, these sessions are an opportunity to step off the treadmill, press pause on all the other stuff that's going on outside of this session and just give you a bit of thinking space. And hopefully some thinking space that gets you to consider perhaps some of the changes you might need to make or some of the adjustments to the way that you're working with your own teams in your business as well. And so we talked about standards and boundaries. We'll look at why setting standards and boundaries is important. And then we're going to talk about this principle of contracting. And I learned this, and Steve on the call, actually, Steve has gone through a similar process as I went through when I retrained as an executive coach. And a big part of coaching is this principle of contracting with clients. And I realized once I'd gone through the program that I'd used it as a business manager unwittingly and inconsistently. So sometimes I'd used it and sometimes I hadn't. And then I started to join up the dots between that contracting approach that I took that worked and the times when I didn't do that and the impact that had on my business. So I'll share a bit about that as we go through this session this morning. But one of the reasons this is, I believe, one of the reasons that setting standards and boundaries is such an important topic is because for many people who get promoted to management or leadership roles, they don't get training on promotion. So there's this assumption that someone's a high performer and they can step into a leadership role and just thrive. And that was an assumption that was made about me when I first went into my first sales management role. And I made the assumption, as well as the business that I was working for and the manager that promoted me and said, you know, it's going to be great. You're going to do great work. And then I recognized that actually one of the challenges was that because I hadn't had the formal structured training, I didn't even, well, there were certain things I didn't even know wasn't doing. And so you end up with this gap. And 61% of managers don't receive the training on promotion. Of those that do, 65% receive no ongoing management training. So even when you get the training, you don't then get the support to embed it in your role. So it can leave you in a huge gap in terms of knowing what to do and how to handle it. And I have, there's a client I worked with over the last 18 months, and we still check in quarterly. And it was a lady who I won't divulge her real name, but her name was, let's call her Tracy, right? So Tracy was originally, she worked in a lab as a scientist. She was a really high performer, and within a short period of time got made manager. And then when she approached me to work with her, she through a series of things that happened in her business, she ended up as managing director of the business, like a scientific business. And it was fascinating because she'd kind of got there by accident, and the person that had promoted her had made a lot of assumptions about her capability, and she was incredibly capable. But one of the things that she struggled with was having direct conversations with people. So what she had noticed through her tenure and her rise to MD was that some of the behaviors in her business team, and she was now responsible for, a technical team who worked in a laboratory. They had a business development team that were out on the road developing the business. They had administration and marketing and communications teams. So it's quite I think she had about 22 people in the business at the time when she started working with me. It's grown since then. But one of the challenges that she had was that people were behaving in a way that was at times inappropriate, and at worst, actually started to create some conflict in the business. And she wasn't sure how to address it. So she'd had a few conversations with people, but wasn't sure what to do. So she and I then worked through a process that helped her to kind of get in place what we're going to talk about today. So we'll go through that. But very often leaders in businesses can find themselves in situations where there's all sorts of things going on, and if you're not confident, as Tracy wasn't, to address them, these small behaviors that are inappropriate start to permeate, and that causes you problems. And we've all been there. I've been there in different roles that I had as well. So some of the things that come up, and I'll share some of these, and I'll be interested to hear your opinion. But some of the things she was dealing with, so attitudes were a big thing, negative attitudes. gossip and chatter within the team about all sorts of things, sometimes about customers. She had her own reporting to do and was relying on her team to provide her with information so that she could do that reporting to her own board of directors. But people were missing deadlines, even though this was happening on a regular basis. You know, she had a monthly meeting once a month where she had to have the information in, but people would miss the deadline. So she'd very often have to either do the work herself. So she was pulling, late nights trying to gather information that her team should have been doing. And that was causing her quite a bit of stress. And then when she was bringing it up, people wouldn't accept responsibility for their actions. There were a number of change initiatives that she tried to put through. People were resisting them, so they ended up not kind of getting the uptake in the business. And of course, with the wrong attitudes come the focus on problems rather than the opportunity to solve a problem and create a solution. So. And of course, anytime she approached it, what she told me she met was defensive behavior. And so these were the common leadership challenges. Now, this isn't unique. I'd love, just while I'm talking about this, just an opportunity for you to think about your business and what you might have to consider for yourself. Clinton's joined us as well. Clinton, good morning. Thank you for joining us. He says off camera today, no problem. So I'd love to hear in the chat, what are some of the things, when you think about your business team, what are some of the things that you experience, I don't know, month by month, in terms of maybe some of the challenges or behaviors? Just a moment to process this for yourselves, because this creates a lens through which you can start to think about what we're going to cover today as the topic. So what are some of the common leadership challenges you face? I'll give you a moment to type that in the chat, and then I'll read them out when you get them. I've had lots of experience in this myself, and it's interesting because some of the things that I've experienced are that I have personal values, and very often people's personal values are different. So what I thought was inappropriate behavior, someone else thinks is completely normal and fine, and that disconnect at times can be surprising and kind of put you off your stride. So Clinton, thanks, Clinton. Yeah, defensive behavior is a common problem. Yeah, thanks, Clinton. It absolutely is. Yeah, I think it's also some people. It's their default is to be defensive. And if you find it works, if defensive behavior for some people works, i.e. when you try and challenge me and I act defensively, you then step back. I'm like, okay, reminder to self, when I act defensively, I get off the hook. So we have to remember the importance of not allowing that defensive behavior to work for people. Yeah, thanks, Clinton. Chris, internal resourcing shortfalls. Yeah, okay, that sounds... That's difficult, because when you've got that going on, Chris, as I can appreciate, it affects everybody, doesn't it? It's not just one department. Everybody has to pick up the slack, right? Eustace got the saying that not accepting responsibility. Yeah, not accepting responsibility, and that's a challenge, because at some point people have to kind of step into owning their role, and if they don't, then you end up with this gap around performance and results. Yeah, thanks, Eustace. Steve, not understanding the bigger picture or having it explained. Yeah, so that joining up the dots between what they're doing and actually what the business is trying to achieve, that bigger picture for everybody. Steve, is that right?
I think, Justin, that sort of fits into the one above, not accepting responsibility. For me, a lot of the issues here are about trying to bring people on board with what the bigger picture of the business is, and obviously some people get it and some people don't.
Yeah,
I think that sounds like with the lady you were just talking about, that's actually part of the problem. If you actually explain that there is a bigger objective, if you like, from an organizational point of view, then people either get that or they don't, and then as a manager how you're going to sort of treat them and what information you're going to provide to them. But
yeah,
for me, it's creating that team dynamic which seemed to be missing in that example that you explained. Doesn't stop bad behavior, but at least then that what you're dealing with.
Yeah, I totally agree, Steve. And you're right. There's if you don't think to do it, sometimes we all have blind spots, don't we? If you don't know to do something, and there's nobody there to guide you or help you understand, actually, there's a better way to do this. Sometimes you just do what you think is right, and it leaves a gap. And I think the other thing that comes up a lot is when you've been in a leadership role for a little while, sometimes there's this, you almost think, yeah, but how do I introduce that now? Because I've let these things happen in the past. How do I change it? We'll talk about that today as well. Yeah. And then what we've got, Brian says team frustrations due to organizational matters, organizational things that are going on. Yeah, sometimes there are things that we can't control because they're organizational, priorities or cultures or norms. And that can frustrate the team. Yeah. Fiona says different expectations when you think they are not accepting responsibility, or is it the way I have communicated it? Yeah. But difficult to know, isn't it? Unless you're really clear about it.
I think just agreeing with what Steve was saying, just when you think it's going in one way and they're thinking something else, and just coming together and ensuring that everybody's understands the business at the end of the day and are all striving towards that. Yeah.
Everyone's clear and they can be aligned in the direction of travel or the goals that you want for the business. Yeah. Great. Thanks, Fiona. So lots, you've all got lots of experience of this yourselves. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. That's useful. So have that as your lens as we think about what we're covering today. So I love this quote about examining what we tolerate, because it's very often the case that what we allow to happen, what we put up with, we end up with. What we allow to happen continues and sometimes gets worse. And sometimes we have to reevaluate for ourselves, actually, how do we make a stand on this or make a change in the dynamics? So let's talk a bit about that before we give you the chance to talk about it yourselves. So I'm going to remind you of this coach leadership system. If you've been on the call before, you'll have seen this as the roadmap for coaching as a leadership style. And this is the roadmap that we follow. So at the start of the process, we think about the right relationships with people. And that's not just having strong relationships, it's about having relationships we can leverage. So we give ourselves the confidence to have those difficult conversations. I also am a fan of having a plan. So having a plan for your business, so you understand where you're headed to and how you can articulate that to your team so that everyone's clear on where we're going. So the plan is really important. And then the piece we're going to talk about today is contracting. So contracting an agreement is the first step once you've got the plan and once you've got the relationships established. So contracting an agreement, and you'll see this maps out it's a mnemonic for the word coach. So contracting first, then objectives and goals. So the C is contracting, O is objectives. The A is action and observation. So having some time to watch your team in action, doing what they do and observing them. From there, it's then an opportunity. Once you've seen how they operate, you'll become aware of their blind spots, the things they don't even realize they're doing that they could be improving, and that is your opportunity to coach for change. So that's what we do. So then we can coach, and we talked about coaching in previous session. We'll cover it in a future session as well. So we start to develop our coaching skills, so we get the other person to identify areas for change and help them make those changes. And then finally, the H is heroes in the making. So getting people to think bigger, take more responsibility, level up in terms of their performance, but also start to think, how do they make a bigger contribution to our business in the future, and start to accept greater autonomy in the role, but also, better contribution to themselves and where we're headed long term. So that's the plan. We're going to focus on contracting today. So what is contracting? Contracting, for me, I like to think of it as a strategic conversation with every person in the business. And the idea is that it allows us to set expectations about what's acceptable and what's not, the standards that we want to meet in the business, being clear about what future performance looks like for key people in the team, and in particular people that are reporting to you. And in from a leader's perspective, it's also about making a commitment to address things that come up, issues that might come up in the future. And what it does is it gives us the opportunity to handle any difficult performance issues, behavioral issues, attitudinal issues as we think about future performance. So the contracting piece is really important because we're basically saying, I'm going to have a reset conversation with everybody in my business, agree these things, and also then say, if issues come up with, behaviors or performance in the team, I'm going to address it with everybody, you included, right? And getting agreement, then that's what's going to happen going forward. And what I've found happens when you introduce this principle in leadership, by contracting, you create this anchor point or this reference point for all of your relationships where you can just come back to it time and time again. And it just creates that clarity so that you give yourself permission, but not just permission or, the authority to handle the things that are more difficult when they come up in the future with your team and people that you work alongside potentially as well. You can contract with anyone in your business. And an example of how you might use contracting, so you'd have a conversation with somebody, you explain that it's almost a reset conversation or a standard setting conversation, and you're using it to, you might say, I'm going to start to use a different leadership style. So I'm going to be coaching more than directing. And what that means is that you might get less answers from me and more questions, but it's because I'm using this style. I want it to help build your sense of responsibility. You might then say, actually, I want us going forward to be more honest, open, and receptive to feedback, right? So this is a two-way conversation. So you want that for yourself as their manager or leader, and you want them to agree to do the same. You might say that I'm looking to foster and encourage more positive behaviors, more positive attitudes in the business, and make our culture generally more positive and engaging for everybody. You might say, I want our teams to be more supportive of each other, so supportive of the other people in the business. And, I'll be supportive of you as a team member, but I need you to be supportive of me as well. Especially if you've got people that perhaps aren't always, their default position isn't to support you. It might be to challenge or undermine you, right? So actually starting to talk about that shift in behavior, that shift in attitude could be really useful. And talk about challenging each other. So challenging constructively and the desire to be challenged, have your ideas challenged, but in a positive way so that it helps you and it helps your team to make progress. Because we don't want people that are just complicit or compliant. We want that challenge, but it has to be positive, constructive, healthy challenge in a business. That's where the growth happens for you and for your teams. And then I really like the idea of saying, in future, my commitment to you is to, if a difficult conversation needs to be had, my commitment to you is that I will do it. I'll have the difficult conversation. My expectation is that for both of us, we move forward positively after that difficult conversation. Is that okay? And these are really useful kind of nuances to the contract and agreement that you might have with somebody. And then finally, thinking about seeing feedback as an opportunity for personal growth. So don't see it as criticism, don't see it as a reflection on performance. Actually, we welcome feedback as an opportunity to grow, develop, and improve ourselves as we go forward. And that's that as an example set of contracting has been really useful for me. And that's a live set that I've used with a client. That's what they wanted to achieve with their teams, and we kind of fleshed these out as a set of contracting notes going into the conversation with her one-to-ones. So I'd be interested in your thoughts on this. We're at 25 past. I will open up some breakout rooms today. So we'll just give you the chance just to talk to each other as a team, to think about what you might need to do, what you might need to change as a result of what we've talked about today. Well, we've got, we'll just do a couple of rooms. Because I don't think, we haven't got enough for 3 rooms. So we'll do a couple of rooms. We'll do 10 minutes on this, and then we'll regroup and hear your thoughts. And then, and what is it that you think in terms of your team, your experience? What does this mean for you? How do you make changes? And then we'll take some feedback at the end, and a couple of things I'm going to cover, and then we will wrap up. Okay, so I've just created a couple of rooms on autopilot, so hopefully that's useful. You'll get to meet somebody new. So enjoy your conversation. I'll see you back here in about 10 minutes, and we'll take some feedback. So we're still live streaming to YouTube. While the group are talking in the breakout rooms, I'll continue to live stream. I'll keep the live stream going. This topic of contracting is a really important one, and one that is very rarely taught or understood properly in many leadership courses. So we talk a lot about setting expectations, talk a lot about performance and performance management, talk a lot about leadership styles, and they're really valuable and useful. But this key premise, this principle of contracting, is something that is not usually covered. And as I said in the previous session with the team that were on here, I only recognized this as a principle when I retrained as an executive coach. And it was something that I then realized I had inconsistently been doing when I was working in different businesses that I've led over the years. I've led lots of different types of businesses. And this was an opportunity. It kind of joined up the dots for me back in 2017-18, joined up the dots for me about how contracting as a principle could be applied much more consistently in businesses, and giving people that structure around how contracting works, what the opportunity is, and how they could start to integrate that into their leadership style and working with their teams has been really valuable. So I definitely encourage you to, you know, this is a live session for our group here, but just consider, if you're in a leadership role today, what does contracting offer you as an approach that you could take with your teams to start to create clearer guidance, clearer boundaries, and set the standards that you really want for your team members? Because sadly, or just actually maybe from a basic reality perspective, it's the reality of the world we live in. Everybody has different values and standards, and what some of us believe are acceptable or unacceptable behaviors, other people don't see as acceptable or unacceptable. And having those conversations with each member of your team and collectively as a team can really help everybody to calibrate. So through the discussion about what is acceptable, what people find acceptable, and what they find unacceptable, having those conversations about how you talk to each other, the behaviors and attitudes that we display, the way in which we interact with each other, the support or level of challenge and the way that challenge is delivered. For some people, they can't, you know, there'll be a different interpretation. So discussing it openly with people, your teams, your peers, even if you're part of a leadership team, having that same conversation with your peers in the leadership team can be valuable, so that everybody is agreed on how you will conduct yourselves going forward. Can be hugely beneficial for cultures where perhaps that hasn't been the norm in the past. So really encourage you to consider, what does this mean for your business, and what small steps could you start with to introduce contracting to your organization, your teams, and the people that you work with. And interestingly, as I say, it wasn't until I learned this as a coach that I realized the value of it, but I then recognized and reflected on times when I'd done it. And actually, contracting can be done in almost every direction. So you can contract with people that are your direct reports one-to-one. You can do it at a team level so that your entire team agree to a contract or an agreement, a charter of how you work together. You can do it with your peers. So you can talk to, your colleagues. If you're in a, as I say, a leadership team, you can talk about how together and collectively you operate and work together. And then I've even done it with my line manager, so a business director, where, and interestingly, I did it because of necessity. So I had a line manager who our relationship was the best word, volatile probably is the best word. And actually just trying to understand, how do we reset this? How do we get some agreement on how we're going to behave and how we're going to treat each other was really useful. So consider, I'd love for you to consider how does this play out for you at all sorts of levels and also with all sorts of relationships in your business. It can be really, once you get this right, it can be really valuable for you and for other people. And certainly the feedback I've had with clients that have introduced this contracting principle is that it gives their teams much more clarity over what's expected. And as a leader, it certainly makes your role, it makes your position much more enjoyable and, dare I say, easier. I don't know if it makes it easier, but it certainly makes it more enjoyable. It makes it more certain for you that you can address different situations. There's still going to be, if you're in a leadership position, there's always the challenge of leadership. It's one of the most difficult positions in an organization is leadership. Once we step into those leadership positions, we end up with a lot more of those personal challenges and professional challenges that we have to deal with. So think about it for yourself. The group are in discussions at the moment, so I'll be welcoming them back in a couple of minutes. And look forward to, if you're watching this on the replay, if you've got questions about it, feel free to contact me directly, either through the post on YouTube. This is streaming live to YouTube, or or my contact details will be on there, or contact me if you'd like to get in touch. Do feel free to do that. We are going to bring the group back shortly. So let me just give them a message. Just giving them a last couple of minutes warning. Yeah, right. So contracting. It's also useful. It's also useful to consider the team level contract. We haven't discussed that at length today, but I would we'll cover it in a future session, future one of these, team contracting, and the importance of not only one-to-one contracting, which is valuable, but also that opportunity to bring a team together and get alignment. I talked about calibration earlier, to be able to get the team fully aligned and contracting with each other, so they agree how they will work together with each other and start to become self-managing in terms of the contract. So that's the opportunity, I think, is we go from the leader having to manage those individual contracts and have those conversations, which I think you'll always end up doing. But then at a team level, encouraging the team to start to take that responsibility for each other. So the teams start to manage and hold people accountable to the contract that they create together. So it can be really useful if we get this right. And nothing happens in a single conversation or a single meeting. So welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. We'll just give the other group a moment to rejoin. Perfect. We're all here. Excellent. Good. So I hope your conversations were useful this morning with each other. Hope you enjoyed meeting some new people, expanding your leadership network. So I'd love to hear from each of the groups. We had 2 rooms. First room was Brian, Chris, Clinton, and Eust. Who'd like to share some feedback? Got a thumbs up from Clinton as well. Thanks, Clinton. Who'd like to share some feedback from your discussion? Oh, Brian, you're on mute. You are talking, but you're on mute.
Sorry, I thought I was on mute before I unmuted. So
Okay.
just very quick, we actually really only covered one topic or one subject, which was the challenge you have when you've got, you know, we talked at the start about people moving into management roles or leadership roles without training, but we also were talking actually about when you potentially have someone in your team you want to develop that isn't open to development because they think they don't need it. So we were talking around the challenges of an individual that doesn't want to develop and grow. And actually, if that preferred person is performing well, as far as they're concerned, they think they don't need to develop. So we would bouncing that around. And I don't know if the other guys want to kind of chip in, but that was the subject we covered.
Yeah. What did you come up with, Brian, as kind of ways to manage that?
I think, to be fair, Clinton was just giving some thoughts around that in terms of how you kind of almost need to tackle that head on with that individual to make them understand that, you know, whether it's because you want to develop them into a leadership role or because it could have an impact on the wider team. And you don't want that person potentially, if they leave, to leave a vacuum in the team. So you don't want any negativity around that. So almost that really you do need to find a way to get that individual to understand that for the benefit of them, the business and the team, they do need to develop them. Maybe there's some specific things that you perhaps need to cover with them around certain leadership or development topics, you know, rather than having that broader discussion.
Yeah.
The other guys have got any comments wanting to add to that?
Yeah, I love this example contracting note. It really opens up my head to what a contract, an invisible contract is, and you know, having this almost like this vacuum of positive energy through our actions. We were talking about a maverick that is sucking up the atmosphere, even though they're delivering tasks, delivering sales, and you know, being in a situation where you're kind of like caught in a headlock. If that person doesn't want to deliver, what happens to the rest of the group? Really flags up for me, and I've been in this real life scenario. It really flags up that the rest of the team suffer, and they don't get to be the best versions of themselves purely because of being overwhelmed by that person's results. And so your examples of contracting notes really flag up the behavior in me. The fish rots from the top. So I now thinking, how do I now foster these things, be open and honest, receptive? You know, we want to do those things, but we're trying to get everyone to a place of understanding. That was resonating with what Chris was saying with an example. We have the same example. So these contracting support, these examples of contracting notes are very powerful, even though they're hidden in plain sight. They're very powerful to really build in myself and radiate to the rest of the team.
Yeah, thanks, Clinton. Really useful. Yeah. Chris, did you want to build on that? You sounds like you had a similar experience.
It's not necessarily build on it. It was just a comment I was making that you can only coach somebody who wishes to be coached, who has that growth mindset, who is open to it. And sometimes you can have a challenge with a top performer who can point at what they're delivering, which is what they're getting paid to do, and be very, very close to coaching. When you look at them and see the potential and you think they could be developed, or they're putting their hand up for development for the next role, etc., overcoming that can be really difficult if you don't have that basic, they're willing to be coached on and receive feedback on what they need to improve. And I think the two are very separate. So there's management conversations. They can be close to them, but at the end of the day, I'm telling you, this is what's going to happen, period, which is very different to a coaching conversation where you're trying to get them to get themselves to the next level when they're close to that too. So it's great written down on a slide and on a piece of paper, but in practice, it's not without challenge.
True. Yeah, true. And it's interesting because as Clinton was talking about it, and as you were talking about it, Chris, it reminded me of different situations I've been in. I always remember a salesperson I had, and he was by far and away, the best salesperson I had, and his attitude was, "But I'm the best in the team, so how can you? What is there for me to learn?" Right? So he didn't, never filled out his CRM, never filled out his development plans, that kind of thing. And what I found was useful. So I did have a contracting conversation with him about actually his attitude and the attitude and the impact of his attitude on the team, right? And actually that it's not just about what he does and his performance, it's about how it impacts team performance, right? And he was unaware of that. He just thought because he was showboating that everybody thought he was great, and actually what it did was undermine some people. And the other thing I did with him was he used to resist field visits. So I had a couple of really positive field visits with him, and I spent a lot of time in the action observation zone, just watching him perform in front of customers. And we'd go in to see a customer. I would, I'd do the introductions. Also, I'd say hello and thanks for seeing us and stuff. And then I'd just sit and I'd just zip it. And I'd watch like a hawk. And really what I was trying to understand is, I was trying to figure out how's this guy so successful, because he was brilliant, but he also had some blind spots that he had no idea about. So, and I was able to then, through that action observation, get a bit closer to him and just coach him. At this point in the meeting, did you notice this? And he'd say, "Oh no, what do you mean?" And I'd say, "Well, I noticed that the customer did this. Can you remember that?" And he'd go, "No." And I'll be like, "What?" So tell me, why do you think that happened? And over a couple of coaching conversations, he actually said to me at a review shortly after that it had changed the way he started to think. So perhaps there was some stuff for him to learn. 6 months later, he left. So it wasn't all 6 months later, he went because he got a better job offer somewhere else, earning a lot more money. But these things aren't easy. But the bit for me is actually coming back to process. Actually, are we following the steps of the process? It doesn't, not everybody is coachable, as you say, but sometimes if we go back through the process, it can really help. Clinton's got his hand up. Clinton, hi.
I think also that there's the other thing that I'm prepared. I'm just thinking about my scenario, reflecting upon my scenario. It was a bit annoying at the time when it happened.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you have these people that are uncoachable, the perception, maybe I'm just looking at it from their angle, they think that they're probably more closer to you than you think.
Yeah.
They think, well, I'm doing everything and we don't look any different. So why am I gonna listen to you when I don't think you have anything really to say? And I'm prepared to open that up to look at it from the angle. What do they see from me? And I like that example that you just gave, a few nudges and it affected, sometimes their brightness it enables them to be blind. And so when they see that you've illuminated their understanding, they realize, oh, wait a minute, there's something brighter out there. Yeah. Then they start, because they are typically, I remember when I was a maverick, we just look for shiny stuff. And if we're shining all the time, it's very hard for us to see.
That's a really good metaphor for it, Clinton. If they're shining so bright, they can't see anything. And sometimes as a manager, it's our job, or a leader, it's our job to coach people to that awareness.
Right.
And not, we will still meet people who are resistant and think, there's no value in it. But for me, coaching is the way to do it, because what we're saying is look at this and then coach them on it. It's not, it's not me saying I think you could improve here and there. It's I've observed this. Let's talk about it.
Right.
What do you think this represents? What does it mean for you? What's the opportunity to grow or to change or improve? And people can't always see that for themselves. Yeah, really good conversation. Thank you, gents. That's really good. So room 2 was Fiona, Menaka, and Steve. I'd love to hear your feedback from your discussion.
I'm happy to say anything, but I mean, we were just talking. Well, we were getting to know each other because Menaka and I hadn't met before, so there's a bit of that chat going on. And then it was interesting hearing Steve's point of view from being in a larger organisation and how we in a smaller organisation are able to have those conversations and also get to know the characters far more to be able to give them feedback on linking in with the business culture, as it were. So that was really interesting. But I was just saying that from my point of view, I'm just starting off, so I'm trying to get it right from the beginning. So what you've been saying today has been really helpful to try and get the right team.
Yeah,
but it's sometimes really difficult. So I've got this really a diverse person working for me, so their understanding of what I've said, I'm learning how to say the right thing to ensure that they're on the same page as me and doing what I'm expecting them to do. So.
Yeah, wow. And it's interesting, Fiona, one of the other things that I really encourage as part of coaching conversations, when you've finished a conversation with someone and you want to check for understanding, is just get them to replay it back to you. And then you'll immediately see the disconnect, because if they say something completely different, they're off track.
Yeah.
And it's such a simple thing. It took me a few attempts to get that right. So because I'm a fan of summarizing, but if I summarize, it doesn't help the person in front of me to clarify what they're thinking. So if I get them to summarize, it's amazing how what difference that makes in the shift in clarity.
Yeah, I think thanks, Fiona. I mean, it was a great conversation, but as Fiona said, I think what she's doing is and Menaka as well, in terms of their practices and their companies, is different from my experience working in a corporate where, people are a little bit kind of the mindset's different, but actually in all those cases, and I think in Fiona's case particularly, I think it's about, and just thinking about what you were saying, Justin, as well, it's about rapport as well. So whatever level this is, it's about building that personal relationship with the individual and them understanding a little bit about what the expectations of the business are and where you're trying to take the business.
Yeah.
But it is still about rapport. And I always remember when I started this coaching journey that I've been on, we think we are building rapport, but if we're not listening as leaders, then that rapport doesn't really count for very much. So I think that's the trick. And if you're open to listening and asking the right questions, which again, I think is what Clinton was talking about from a coaching perspective, then those questions are golden, really. And if you can get that right, then you're well on your way.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, Steve. I agree. And it sounds so simple, doesn't it? It sounds so simple. And then
it's not, yeah.
And then you finish, we'll finish this session and, everything else hits you, the volume of workload. So we all end up in this kind of state of, urgency and rushing everything and multitasking from one thing to another. And all of a sudden we're in a conversation with someone and we end up just kind of going, look, I just need to do this, and this. All right. Okay. See you. Let's go. And that's part of our challenge, is how do we create the space for coaching? Because short term, it feels like it takes more time, and that there is a reality that it does, but we really are investing in the relationship for long term so that people start to build that sense of independence. But it takes a commitment, and sometimes it takes other people to help us make that commitment.
Yeah, well, interestingly, it doesn't actually take, as you know, Justin, we've been through this bit. You can, if you watch really good coaches, it can take a matter of minutes to uncover what the real issues are when people are not performing. And but yeah, you're right. You have to prepare probably for that as well. So that's what it takes. But it can be unblocking what the issues are doesn't necessarily need to take a long time, but it's a bit of a mindset
shift.
thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, totally. Great conversation this morning. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Really, really useful. I've got a couple of things I'll just share with you, and then we will close. So I'll finish the story. The lady. Let me share my screen. Hold on a sec. Where's my screen gone? There it is. The lady I was I was talking about Tracy earlier, not her real name, by the way. Here's the testimonial she gave after she'd been on our 12-month program, and then we continued to do some work together. So it was for her, it was about stepping up into leadership. I think from the conversation I had with her, she never really felt confident to do that. So what was interesting for her was that her team actually engaged more when she did, started behaving in a way that supported each other and her. And she found a level of confidence and assertiveness that she kind of had been avoiding, even though she could do it, she hadn't been doing it. And the team responded really well to that. She's had one-to-one conversations where people are saying, actually, I enjoy being part of this team more now that there's clarity and that the behaviors have improved. And she's picking people up on what's accepted and what isn't. And it's a calibration thing. So she's constantly calibrating people's behaviors and helping them to see, actually, this impacts the team either positively or negatively. And what she and I have also worked on is going out and looking for the good examples. Because it's really easy for us to go, no, that's not right, don't do this. But really, actually also praising people who have realigned with the right kind of behaviors. So that's equally important. And I love this quote. I thought I'd share this today. If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. This is, for leaders who are too directive, sometimes because they don't know any other way, and that's what we find. It's what I found when I was first in leadership. So we have to start to flex and find other approaches to manage our leadership situations. I've talked about this in the past, but 5 things that we need to have in order to get this right. You need to be able to have confidential conversations. You need a community of people that will support you. You need to collaborate with people who can share ideas. You need people to challenge your thinking so that you don't just keep doing the same things over and over. I need a commitment to accountability so that you make the changes stick. They're the 4 things. If anybody would like conversation with me, I always offer this. So thank you to those of you who have taken me up on this. Let me just drop in the chat my one-to-one coaching link. So let me just pop that in there. So this is it's a kind of strategy session or discovery session, just to give you the chance to discuss what's going on for you in your business. And then if you think there are some things that are useful for us to work on together, then you've got that option as part of the conversation. But it really is about some clarity. Okay, we are coming up to 5:02. So letting everybody kind of jump off now. Any final questions? I will stay on if anybody has got any questions that you want to ask me one-to-one. But otherwise, we'll wrap up now and say thanks everybody for a great session. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend and look forward to seeing you. Hopefully, we're here again next week. So hopefully see you next week.
Appreciate it, Justin.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Have a
guys.
great weekend.
Bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
thanks everyone.
Bye.
Have a great weekend. Thank you. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Pleasure. Thanks, Monica. Thanks. Bye.